Hello everyone, I'm Kiki, and I just finished Orlando by Virginia Woolf. And I had such a fun time with it. Okay. In Orlando, Virginia Woolf plays with this idea of a fake biography. So she is writing this as if she was a biographer writing about Orlando, the titular character and our main character. So that is the framing of this book. We are reading a biography of this fictional character who Orlando was born, I think, sometime in like the late 1500s. I think he's like a child in 1580, around the time that Queen Elizabeth I is queen, which hopefully is 1580. Otherwise, I look very stupid. You follow him from being a young boy. He catches the eye actually of Queen Elizabeth and like becomes her secret lover for a time while she's getting on in her years. Then she dies, and he just becomes like a regular courtier. There's a whole chapter where he goes back to his country estate and spends the entire chapter furnishing it and then kind of turning it into like a hotel for all of like the rich aristocrats that live around him to come visit him in. And then he becomes an ambassador. And then the thing that Orlando is most well known for happens when the character Orlando is about 30 years old. He's an ambassador in Constantinople. And one day he wakes up and he is a woman. And from then on, Orlando is referred to as she. She is Lady Orlando instead of Lord Orlando. And we kind of follow her now through the rest of her life. She then lives on until like the present day, at least the present day in which Virginia Woolf was writing this, so like 1920 or so. So Orlando lives for 400 years, and most of those hundreds of years as a woman. And that is like probably the most famous thing about Orlando. It's like the thing that everyone says. It's all I knew about Orlando. I didn't even know this was like presented as a fake biography. I just thought this was a book about a boy who one day wakes up as a woman and all that entails. So that is a long-winded summary of what this book is. If I had to sum this book up, I could do it in a single word. Boring. Boring. I'm so sorry. I hate to say it. I really do hate to say it. I will say this is the second Virginia Woolf that I have finished. This is the third I have attempted. So I read Mrs. Dalloway probably about a year ago, and that one was hard. That was very hard for me to read. Part of me hated reading it because it was like so difficult for me to like understand what was going on. But the other part of me like loved it. I loved the end, and then since finishing that book, I think about Mrs. Dalloway several times. I think it made it to like my top 20 favorite books of 2025. I like retroactively, I love the book. I think sometime in September, I started to The Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, and I got about 30% of the way through that before I just had to say, you know what, like I am not locked in enough to really comprehend what's going on. That one was even more difficult to read, was even more stream of consciousness and like discombobulating. So I was like, you know what, I want to come back to this one, but I'm just not in the mood right now. I cannot give enough energy to this book, which the book requires. So this is the second one I finished, but like I said, the third one I've kind of done. And I was convinced this one was going to be my favorite Virginia Woolf because I'm like, this one actually has like a plot, right? Like there's a story to it. There's a man who becomes a woman, and like that's interesting. Like I love gender weird queerness stuff. Like let's go. There's only about like 25-30 pages of actual gender weirdness and like actual exploration of those topics. Like sure, there's more you can find in there if you like care to find, but I don't think there was actually that much in this book dedicated to that theme or that topic. I'm sure like some like Virginia Woolf scholar is going to like discredit me and be like, no, it's the entire thing is it. And I can understand how the entire thing could be about it, could be about this identity and like our identities and who we are and all of this. But I'm gonna be honest, it is just lost. All of that is lost in over 225 pages of the most mind-numbing minutia. The first chapter, I was pretty engaged. The first chapter is Orlando, and he's a young boy up until like probably he's like 20-ish or something. He has his like first love with this Russian princess, and I really loved that experience. I think I still probably will remember. The thing that I remember most from this book is Virginia Woolf's descriptions of like the frozen Thames River when eventually the river thaws and there's like a great big flood and Orlando is standing on the banks watching people drown who got caught on the ice. I think I would still remember some of those scenes. So I was pretty locked in on that chapter. The second chapter was where I started to be like, okay, so when does he become a she? when does this book get interesting, and when does this book like start to deliver on the premise that I had heard about, right? Which is not the book's fault that it doesn't deliver on a premise that I was like hyped up about because other people have told me that this is like what this book is about. That's not the book's fault. But I was like, okay, chapter 2 was okay, but I was like, all right, when is it gonna get here? And then I think it happens about halfway through chapter 3 is the promised moment, and it was underwhelming when it finally happened. That was like about halfway through. Every single page after that, I had to force myself to turn. I started this probably like midway through January, and then I would went like 3 or 4 days without reading anything, and then be like, okay, I have to read this. Like I have to read it. I want to finish it. I honestly multiple times thought about DNFing, but I was like, I cannot DNF another Virginia Woolf, especially since this time it's not a struggle of comprehension or understanding. It is a struggle of caring. But yeah, the last half of this book was so boring, so incredibly boring, when it shouldn't have been. It should have been the most interesting, in my opinion. No, I couldn't. I'm sorry. I thought it was very boring. It was, like I said, it was much easier to read than Mrs. Dalloway or To the Lighthouse, but the writing it was almost too easy in a way. The writing washed over me in a way that kind of felt like, you're at the beach and you're wading through like the ocean, and you see this like wave coming, and you're like, okay, I can't wait to like jump over the wave or something. And then it like dissipates before it even like hits you. And so like really all you get is like a slight like rocking of your body, and then it's like gone. That's kind of how this felt. Like I was like, okay, the writing was good, especially in the first chapter. I was like locked in, and you can tell I did have some like notes, all of them in the first half. And so I was like, okay, I'm really gonna like it. But there was something about the writing that made my mind want to wander. When I'm reading Mrs. Dalloway or To the Lighthouse, like I could not for a second break concentration. If I misread one word or one letter in a word, or I missed it blew the entire thing up, and I literally had to start the entire, like the past 3 pages I had to start over so I could like find my comprehension again. Whereby this, like my eyes could read it and I could fully understand what was going on, but my mind was like wandering because I was so bored, and it didn't hurt. My mind would just naturally wander, and I could tell that it was wandering. And instead of feeling lost, instead of being like, I don't know what's going on now, I could still follow the story exactly. Like I've never had that experience with Virginia Woolf. Usually she literally sets the neurons in my brain like on fire. I can feel my mind being rewired when I was reading Mrs. Dalloway and To the Lighthouse. Like it physically hurt my brain to read. And I could feel new neural connections being made because it was like that taxing. This, I was snoozing in the park. Like I was snoozing. I'm sorry. Not a single line can I remember. Like I know I talked about that scene, but like specific beautiful lines, I don't think I will. I mean, like I said, I have some quotes here, and I do remember like at the time liking them, but can I think of any single one now off the top of my head? No. Even a quick paraphrase? No. Despite having 10 times or more the amount of page time, I care less for the titular character for Orlando than I did for like Septimus in Mrs. Dalloway. Septimus probably had 15, 20 pages. I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. And they were shorter pages than this, because this is like a lot of words on a page, right? In that entire novel. And I loved him. I felt like I understood him. Some of it is because he has a more tragic, like naturally you're just going to be more inclined to him emotionally story. But like I've been following Orlando for his entire life. He's gone through losses and loves and a very like interesting gender thing that should be compelling to me. And I didn't care a single thing about him. I don't even know if he died at the end or she died at the end. I don't care. I was just so glad the book was over. Unfortunately, I just don't think this book was for me. I'm not ready to write off Virginia Woolf yet. I will still get back to the Lighthouse, because at least that writing is closer to Mrs. Dalloway, like the style of writing there, than this. But I think she just might be someone who I prefer her shorter novels to like her longer ones. I am so disappointed. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that you shouldn't read this book. You should read this book if you think it would be interesting to you. I'm just saying I've only ever heard amazing things about this book. Your mileage may vary. Don't necessarily assume this will be a 5-star for you, because it wasn't for me. In fact, I gave it a 2.5, which honestly, I'm only giving it a 2.5 because it's Virginia Woolf. Like, how can I say it's that bad of a book? It's not a bad book. I was just so extremely bored. It just was like I said, it's just not a book for me. Almost nothing about this book worked for me. And that is not Virginia Woolf's fault. It's not my fault. It's just there was some wires were miscrossed, and I just did not enjoy my time reading it. I did not hate this book. I just strongly disliked it, and I'm so mad that I paid the full $20 for this gorgeous Penguin Deluxe Classic Edition, because it's gorgeous and I don't want to give it up. But the thought of having this book on my shelf and looking at me. You know, most of the time before it's gone to my head and tell me to reread any of the books I've read, I'm like, okay, I got it. Especially the books like on my shelf that I physically own. I got it. I would just break down. I would be like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. This one is a tad overhyped for me. Was not my favorite. Let's see if I can like end this on a positive note and find a good quote that I really did like. For once the disease of reading has laid hold upon the system, it weakens it so that it falls an easy prey to that other scourge which dwells in the inkpot and festers in the quill. The wretch takes to writing. So I liked that. And there was a lot about writing in this book. I would say this book talks more about the value of reading and writing and poetry and creative processes than it does about gender, which I guess makes sense. Like Virginia Woolf's a writer. As we all know, writers must be held back by their hair to stop writing about writing. They will never stop writing about writing. Every single book is actually a book about that author's personal struggles and beliefs with writing. And it's something that I have come to realize and understand and accept, but oh my gosh, in this book, it's just not what I wanted to read. For it seemed vain and arrogant in the extreme to try to better that anonymous work of creation, the labors of those vanished hands. Better was it to go unknown and leave behind you an arch, a potting shed, a wall where peaches ripen, than to burn like a meteor and leave no dust. I was like, okay, I liked that. Yeah, I think if this book was half as long, I would have liked it more. And now I'm stuck because, like I said, I paid the full $20 for this gorgeous, I love a Penguin Deluxe Classic Edition, and I try not to buy them unless I'm like, oh, I'm sure I'm going to love this book. I was sure I was going to love this book, and now it's like, what do I do with this? All right, so that's going to be it for this video. Sorry it wasn't a positive one. If you love Orlando, I think that is amazing for you. I wish I could be like you. I wanted to love it. I'm so disappointed I didn't. And I think the reason I'm even angrier about this book is because earlier this month, hold on, I have the book here. I read White Noise by Don DeLillo. Same exact experience where I was like, I'm going to love this book. It's going to be 6 stars. Again, in a beautiful edition that I bought. And I hated it. And I was so convinced. I was like, well, and this was like probably the second or third book I read in January. And I was like, well, at least it's going to be the worst book I read in January, like the one that I dislike the most. And granted, I finished this 3 weeks ago, so how awful it was to read this is like less on my mind, but I would rather reread this than I would reread this. So now that's why I'm really mad at Orlando. All right, that's going to be it for this video. I'm Kiki. I've been talking about the book that I just read, but it's time for me to stop talking so I can go back to reading more books. Like, subscribe, comment, tell me if you liked Orlando or not. Am I crazy? Am I just stupid? Like, did I just like miss everything that this book was saying? And actually, it's the most interesting, well thought out book in the entire world. Let me know in the comments down below. Hope you all have a good day and that you stay safe. Bye.